This is a basic introduction to the StripchartV program. So we'll start by launching the application, and it brings up this default configuration with one pen configured. That's a simulation pen connected to a Matricon OPC server. So what we're going to do in this example is just start browsing my OPC servers, connecting to some PLC addresses, and looking at some data online. So we can browse the OPC either by clicking the button here in the setup table, it's the most convenient, or going to the OPC tab and selecting a server and browsing items from there. So let's do it from this button here, and I'm connected to this OPC server, Factory Talk Gateway. I do have other OPC servers installed on my machine, but we'll stick with this one. And it starts off with a folder showing the root level of browsing for different OPC tags. So we click that, and it shows what topics I've got configured in Factory Talk right now. I only have 3. Process Sim is the one I'm going to be looking at, and under that I have 3 different folders. I'll be looking online since I'm connected to a PLC right now. So there's only one program folder, no controller scope tags, just this one program folder. It's pretty simple. And then I have some tags defined in that program. So let's look at some variables. So there's all sorts of different variables we can choose from. I can double click to add it to the setup table, or I can drag and drop. So when you drag and drop on top of another pen, it'll either insert it above or below, depending on where you drop it in that cell. So I dropped it on the top of the cell, so it put it in between those 2 pens. I'm going to delete this pen just to highlight it, then click the delete button, and it's gone. And now I'm going to start sampling. So I will go back to the sampling, and I'm scanning at 200 milliseconds by default. I can change that on the fly or ahead of time if I needed to. So now I'm reading data. So I've just got 3 pens set up and reading this data live at 200 millisecond interval scans. I can then look at the data in this plot screen, and I would need to select the pens I want to show. So 2 of the pens fell within the default scaling of 0 to 100. I can auto scale around this 3rd pen, the P1 pen. And so now I'm looking at the data in real time. If I wanted to add more data, I could go back to the Setup tab and add another variable. So I just double clicked, and it dropped it right into the next available slot, turned it on, and started reading data. So go back to the plot, and if I wanted to view that piece of data, I could just show it or not. Okay, so we are looking at these 3 or 4 pens if we wanted to, 3 shown right now. If we click into the plot setup table, it changes the corresponding y-axis scale, and it also highlights the pen to give you a visual clue which one is which. So that's really nice when you have a lot of pens set up and you're trying to figure out which one's which in the plot. You can just click into the table here, and it'll briefly highlight that pen. So we're reading real-time data, and now let's do some more advanced plotting functions. So let's zoom in. By default, the zoom is horizontal mode. So that pauses the display of the real-time sample, but it's still scanning in the background. The values are still being updated. We're just frozen in this one view we're looking at. So we are zoomed in, and a zoom summary window appeared down below. So this summary window shows where in the overall trend we're looking at, and we can manipulate that by dragging these slide bars, or just left mouse button and drag the whole zoom window around. We can place cursors, and I guess I should show that you can zoom in a rectangular mode, and it'll show you where you're highlighted in the overall trend. Now we can add cursors, and cursors are draggable vertical bars that have corresponding values in each of the pens and in time. So you can see how those vary, those values and the deltas as well. So really handy to be able to see the delta in the signals and the delta in time. So if we want to go back to viewing the real-time data coming in, we'll just hit reset, and now we're seeing the data that was being captured in the background there. That's a pretty basic introduction to the program. Keep it short, and there's plenty other features, but I think I'll leave it at that for the introduction.